December 23rd, 1921. The cold Atlantic air bites through the thin wool of a young man's coat. The freighter, a rust-streaked vessel named the Vincenzo Florio, groans against the black waves, its single smokestack coughing a plume of dark soot into the starless Virginia night. Below deck, the air is thick with the smell of bilge water, unwashed bodies, and the faint, sweet scent of citrus smuggled in crates from Palermo. For 19-year-old Carlo Gambino, this is the smell of a new world. He is not a large man, but his stillness gives him a presence that belies his age. His eyes, dark and watchful, miss nothing. The nervous tremor in the hand of a fellow stowaway, the glint of a knife tucked into another's belt, the way the crewmen avoid this particular cargo hold. He is one of a dozen men from the province of Palermo, all escaping the poverty and stagnant honor of the old country for the promise of America. They are not immigrants in the legal sense. They are ghosts, their names absent from any official manifest. They are human contraband, arranged for by cousins and uncles who have already made the journey. Carlo's connection is the Castellano family, relatives who have already sunk roots into the teeming Italian neighborhoods of New York City. He listens to the other men speak in hushed, excited whispers about the streets paved with gold, the jobs that pay dollars instead of lire. Carlo remains silent. He is not here for a job. He is here for an opportunity. Days later, the stench of the sea is replaced by the industrial funk of the Brooklyn waterfront. The world is a cacophony of screeching cranes, steam whistles, and a dozen languages clashing in the air. Carlo is met not by a welcoming committee, but by a single heavy-set man in a dark overcoat named Gaetano. This is family. No warm embrace is offered, only a curt nod and a gesture toward a waiting Ford Model T. The car rumbles over cobblestone streets, past pushcart vendors and tenement buildings with laundry strung between them like prayer flags. This is not the gold-paved paradise the others dreamed of. It is a grimy, fiercely competitive world, and Carlo understands it instantly. It is a world where silence is strength and observation is a weapon. He is brought into the orbit of Salvatore Toto D'Aquila, one of the most powerful and respected bosses in New York. But it is not the bosses Carlo studies. It is the men just beneath them. He works as a driver, then an enforcer, but his true value is his mind. During the violent upheaval of the Castellamarese War, a bloody conflict that pits the Sicilian clans against each other for control of the city's rackets, Carlo does not seek glory. While other young men make their names with the crack of a pistol, Carlo makes his by listening. He watches as Joe, the boss, Masseria, and Salvatore Maranzano tear the city apart, their armies of gunmen leaving bodies in the streets. He sees their ego, their need for tribute and public fear. He recognizes it as a fatal weakness. He gravitates toward the crew of Vincent Mangano, a quieter, more business-oriented boss who values earning over brute force. Within this family, he finds a mentor in the fearsome Albert Anastasia. Anastasia is everything Carlo is not. Loud, volatile, a man who revels in violence. He is the head of the organization's enforcement arm, a group of killers the press would one day dub Murder Incorporated. Anastasia sees in the quiet Sicilian a complementary mind, a cool, calculating strategist to his own hot-tempered fury. Carlo, in turn, sees in Anastasia a powerful tool, a man whose violent reputation can be aimed and fired like a cannon. Carlo learns the brutal mathematics of their world from Anastasia, but he also learns what not to do. He watches Anastasia scream at subordinates, draw unwanted attention, and make enemies out of potential allies. Carlo spends his days running bootleg liquor operations, muscling in on union locales, and collecting payments. But his real work is done at night, in the smoky back rooms of social clubs and restaurants. He sits at tables with men twice his age, never speaking unless spoken to, his eyes absorbing every detail. He learns who is loyal, who is greedy, who is fearful. He builds a network not of soldiers, but of sources. He understands that information is more valuable than bullets, and that a whispered word at the right time can accomplish more than a dozen Tommy guns. While men like Lucky Luciano are redesigning the very structure of the American mafia, creating the commission to prevent future wars, Carlo Gambino is quietly building the foundation of his own empire, brick by silent brick, within the Mangano family. He is an apprentice learning his trade, and his trade is power. The year is 1933. The Volstead Act is dead, and the rivers of illegal booze that floated a generation of gangsters are drying up. For many, it is a time of panic. Men who built empires on smuggled whiskey and bathtub gin now scramble for a foothold in a changing world. But in a dimly lit office behind a Brooklyn garment factory, Carlo Gambino sees not an end, but a beginning. While his contemporaries fight over the scraps of the bootlegging trade, Carlo, now a respected captain in the Mangano family, turns his attention to less glamorous, more sustainable sources of income. He looks at the sprawling Brooklyn waterfront, a city within a city, and sees a kingdom waiting to be conquered. He does not use guns, he uses ledgers and leverage. With his brother-in-law and trusted ally, Paul Castellano, Carlo methodically infiltrates the longshoremen's unions. A small loan to a union official here, a favor for a shop steward there. He offers protection from rival gangs, ensuring that cargo moves smoothly, for a price. He understands that controlling the flow of goods is more powerful than controlling a speakeasy. He expands into illegal gambling, setting up bookmaking operations and backroom casinos that cater to the working man. He perfects the art of loan sharking, lending money at exorbitant rates to those who cannot get it from a bank. Each racket is a quiet, steady stream of revenue, flowing invisibly into the family's coffers, and more importantly, cementing Carlo's reputation as a top-tier earner. His partnership with Albert Anastasia evolves. Anastasia remains the fearsome enforcer, the Lord High Executioner, whose name alone is enough to quell dissent. But it is Carlo who directs that fearsome power. When a rival crew tries to move in on their trucking interests, Anastasia wants to leave a dozen bodies in the street. Carlo counsels patience. He spends 2 weeks gathering information, learning the rival crew's weaknesses. He discovers the crew chief has a gambling problem. Carlo arranges for the man's debt to be bought, and with a single quiet conversation, the problem is solved. The rival crew is absorbed, their assets now belonging to the Manganos, all without a single shot fired. Anastasia gets the credit for the expansion. Carlo gets the loyalty of the newly acquired soldiers who appreciate a boss who does not spill blood unnecessarily. This delicate balance of power continues for nearly 2 decades. The Mangano family prospers under the joint leadership of the boisterous Vincent Mangano, the terrifying Albert Anastasia, and the invisible Carlo Gambino. But the tension between Mangano and Anastasia, 2 men of immense pride and differing philosophies, is a simmering volcano. Mangano, an old-world traditionalist, resents Anastasia's high profile and his close ties to non-Sicilians like Frank Costello and Meyer Lansky. Anastasia, in turn, chafes under Mangano's authority. The eruption comes on April 19, 1951. The news travels not through headlines, but in whispers across telephone wires and encoded conversations in social clubs. Philip Mangano, Vincent's brother, has been found dead in a marsh near Sheepshead Bay, shot 3 times. On the same day, Vincent Mangano disappears completely. He is last seen driving away from his Brooklyn home and is never heard from again. In the dangerous world they inhabit, such a coincidence is an impossibility. All eyes turn to one man, Albert Anastasia. Anastasia does not wait to be accused. He calls a meeting of the family's capos. He stands before them, a bull of a man radiating menace, and declares that Mangano had been plotting to kill him. He acted first. It was kill, or be killed. He is now the boss. No one dares to question him. He then turns to the quietest man in the room. He names Carlo Gambino his underboss. Carlo's face is a mask of calm acceptance. He simply nods. He has just become second in command of one of New York's 5 families, a promotion secured over the bodies of his former bosses. He expresses no shock, no glee, no remorse. He just watches, and he waits. The commission, influenced by the powerful Frank Costello, reluctantly sanctions Anastasia's takeover. The Mangano family is officially no more. It is now the Anastasia family, and it is ruled by a man whose answer to every problem is a bullet. Carlo Gambino, the silent strategist, is now 1 heartbeat away from the throne. March 6th, 1952. The black and white television in the corner of a Bensonhurst social club flickers, casting a pale, dancing light on the faces of the men gathered inside. They watch a news report about Willie the Actor Sutton, the notorious bank robber who was recently captured thanks to a tip from a 24-year-old clothing salesman named Arnold Schuster. Albert Anastasia, holding a glass of anisette, leans forward, his massive frame blocking the screen. His eyes narrow. He recognizes Schuster from the neighborhood. He sees a civilian, a nobody, who put himself in the middle of business that was not his. He sees a rat. A low growl rumbles in his chest. "I can't stand squealers," he snarls, slamming his glass down so hard the liquor sloshes onto the table. "Hit that bastard!" The room falls silent. Even the most hardened soldiers look at each other with unease. Killing a civilian, a member of the public celebrated as a hero by the press, is a cardinal sin. It brings the kind of attention the police, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the newspapers, that is poison to their business. It is a violation of the unwritten rules established by Luciano's commission. But no one says a word. No one looks at Anastasia. Instead, their eyes drift almost imperceptibly toward the man sitting in the corner, calmly stirring his coffee. Carlo Gambino. Carlo's expression is unreadable. He offers no protest, no counsel. He simply watches his boss sign his own death warrant. 10 days later, Arnold Schuster is found shot to death on a street in Borough Park, a brazen execution that shocks the city and brings a firestorm of law enforcement down on the Anastasia family. This is the nature of Albert Anastasia's rule. He is a king who governs by volcanic whim. His paranoia, stoked by years of violence and a recent investigation into his tax affairs, grows more severe by the day. He sees conspiracies everywhere. He orders hits over minor slights, his decisions driven by emotion rather than logic. The family, while feared, becomes unstable. The steady, predictable flow of income that men like Gambino have worked for decades to build is threatened by the boss's erratic behavior. The capos grow fearful, not of their enemies, but of their own leader. Through this chaos, Carlo Gambino moves like a ghost. He remains the perfect underboss, loyal, respectful, and above all, quiet. He runs his own crews with quiet efficiency, his rackets in garment district trucking and waterfront control bringing in millions. When soldiers have problems, a dispute with another crew, a personal financial issue, they find they cannot approach the volatile Anastasia. So they go to Carlo. He listens patiently, offers wise counsel, and solves their problems without screaming or threats. He lends them money from his own pocket. He builds a deep reservoir of loyalty, a silent army within Anastasia's own ranks. He is the calm center of the hurricane, and men are drawn to him. The other bosses of the commission are also watching. Vito Genovese, the ambitious and ruthless head of the Luciano family, sees Anastasia as a major obstacle. Genovese wants to be the capo di tutti I capi, the boss of all bosses. But his main rival, the subtle and politically connected Frank Costello, is a longtime friend and ally of Anastasia. As long as Anastasia lives, Costello is untouchable. Genovese knows he cannot move against Anastasia directly. The man is too well guarded and his reputation for savagery is legendary. He needs a man on the inside. He needs Carlo Gambino. Secret meetings are arranged, not in smoke-filled backrooms, but in public places, a shared park bench, a walk through a crowded market. Genovese, a man of blunt force, lays out his proposition. He will support Carlo's bid to take over the family. He will guarantee the commission's approval. All Carlo has to do is remove the obstacle. Remove Anastasia. Gambino, for his part, listens more than he speaks. He knows Genovese is using him, but he also knows that Genovese is a tool he can use in return. An alliance of convenience is formed, a pact sealed not with a handshake, but with a quiet understanding. The two most cunning minds in the American underworld are now united against its most feared killer. Carlo begins his work. It is a masterpiece of subtle manipulation. He identifies Anastasia's most loyal bodyguards and, using his influence, ensures they are assigned to other tasks or sent out of town on the day he has in mind. He uses his brother-in-law, Paul Castellano, to gather intelligence on Anastasia's daily routine, which has become stubbornly predictable. Every morning, Anastasia visits the barbershop at the Park Sheraton Hotel in Manhattan for a shave and a haircut. It is a moment of vanity, a moment of vulnerability. It is the perfect stage. Carlo selects the hit team, men he can trust to be efficient and, more importantly, silent. The pieces are moved into place, silently, inexorably. October 25th, 1957, dawns crisp and clear. Albert Anastasia wakes up in his Fort Lee, New Jersey mansion, unaware that the silent apprentice he promoted years ago has now finished his education. October 25th, 1957. The morning sun slants through the large plate glass windows of the Park Sheraton Hotel barbershop on 7th Avenue. The air smells of talcum powder, bay rum, and hot lather. It is just past 10:30. Albert Anastasia, dressed in a sharp suit but forgoing his toupee for the trim, settles into barber chair number 4. He is a mountain of a man, even reclining, and the white smock draped over him looks like a napkin on a bear. He chats amiably with the barber, Joseph Bacchino, his voice a low rumble that carries across the opulent mirrored room. His bodyguard, Anthony Coppola, parks the car, and feeling a moment of ease, decides to take a short walk rather than stand sentry in the shop, a fatal and perhaps prearranged error in judgment. Anastasia closes his eyes as a hot towel is wrapped around the lower half of his face, its warmth and steam a familiar comfort. He is 55 years old, the undisputed king of a criminal empire, a man who has ordered the deaths of hundreds. In this moment he is utterly relaxed, unguarded, a lion dozing in the sun. He hears the jingle of the bell on the shop door but pays it no mind. He feels a slight draft as 2 men, their faces obscured by scarves and dark fedoras, walk past the shoeshine stand and the manicurist's station. The tranquility shatters. The 2 men flank his chair. They do not speak. The first thing Anastasia feels is the hot towel being ripped from his face. His eyes fly open to the sight of polished steel. 2 pistols, a .38 caliber Colt police positive, and a .32 caliber Smith & Wesson, are leveled at him. There's no time to think, no time to roar. The barbershop explodes in a cacophony of sound. The first shot, from the .38, strikes him in the right hand. The second hits his back. The third smashes into his hip. Anastasia, fueled by a lifetime of pure, animalistic rage, surges to his feet. He lunges not at his attackers, but at their reflections in the vast wall mirror, his dying mind confused by the light and glass. He stumbles, crashing into a display case of lotions and tonics. The gunmen step closer, their movements economical and precise. They fire again and again. The final bullets find their mark in his head and neck. 10 shots in less than 30 seconds. Albert Anastasia, the Mad Hatter, the Lord High Executioner, lies dead on the black and white tiled floor, his blood pooling around him. The gunmen, without a word, turn and walk calmly out of the shop, disappearing into the midday bustle of Manhattan. They leave behind a scene of carnage and a power vacuum of immense proportions. The news spreads through the underworld with the speed of a lit fuse. Within the hour, Carlo Gambino calls a meeting of the family's capos at a restaurant in Little Italy. He walks into the room, his expression somber, his demeanor that of a grieving subordinate. He speaks of the tragedy, the shocking death of their beloved boss. He talks of the need for stability, for a steady hand to guide them through this turbulent time. He never raises his voice. He never mentions his own ambition. He lets the other men speak. One by one, the capos, men whose loyalty he has carefully cultivated for years, voice their support. They have feared Anastasia. They respect Gambino. They see in him a return to sanity, a path to quiet prosperity. By the time the plates of pasta arrive, the decision is unanimous. Carlo Gambino is the new boss. The Anastasia family is now the Gambino family. 2 weeks later, Vito Genovese makes his own move. He orchestrates a failed assassination attempt on Frank Costello, who, shaken and weary, agrees to retire. Genovese takes over the Luciano family, renaming it for himself, and calls for a grand meeting of bosses from across the country to solidify his new position as the nation's most powerful mafioso. The meeting is to be held in the sleepy upstate New York town of Appalachian. Gambino, the new boss, is expected to attend and pledge his fealty. He agrees. But Carlo Gambino does not trust Vito Genovese. He understands that the man who helped him climb to power will just as easily cast him aside. He knows Genovese's ambition has no limits. While Genovese plans his coronation, Gambino, ever the strategist, begins planning his own countermove, a subtle act of betrayal that will reshape the landscape of the American mafia for the next 50 years. November 14th, 1957. A light rain mists the rolling hills of upstate New York, clinging to the bare November trees. The town of Appalachian is a quiet hamlet, a place of family homes and small farms, unprepared for the parade of expensive automobiles now navigating its country lanes. Cadillacs and Lincolns with license plates from as far away as California, Florida, and Illinois rumbled towards the sprawling stone estate of Joseph "Joe the Barber" Barbara, a local racketeer and Genovese loyalist. Inside, a massive barbecue is being prepared, a feast to celebrate the ascension of Vito Genovese as the new boss of bosses. 60 of the most powerful criminals in the United States are gathering to pay homage. Carlo Gambino arrives in a modest black Chrysler, his brother-in-law Paul Castellano at the wheel. He is dressed in a simple dark suit, looking more like a provincial businessman than a New York kingpin. He greets his fellow bosses with quiet deference, shaking hands with Santo Trafficante Jr. from Florida, Joe Profasi from Brooklyn, and Stefano Magaddino from Buffalo. He nods respectfully to Genovese, who is holding court near the barbecue pit, his face flushed with triumph. Gambino accepts a plate of food, finds a quiet corner, and observes. He sees the arrogance of the gathering, the sheer improbability of so many high-profile figures congregating in one place without attracting attention. It is exactly the kind of ostentatious display of power he has always disdained. It is a fatal weakness. His observation is interrupted by the sound of a car backfiring, followed by another. But it is not a car. It is the sound of men shouting, of panicked running. A state trooper, a curious local sergeant named Edgar D. Croswell, has noticed the unusual number of luxury cars descending on his town. Acting on a hunch, he has called for backup. Now, a hastily assembled roadblock of New York State police cars is sealing the single road leading away from the Barber estate. The trap is sprung. Chaos erupts. Dons in $500 suits scramble into the surrounding woods, their polished shoes sinking in the mud. They toss pistols and wads of cash into the undergrowth, trying to shed any incriminating evidence. Some are caught trying to climb fences, their fine clothes snagged on barbed wire. Others simply surrender, their faces a mixture of fury and disbelief. Vito Genovese, the would-be king, is found hiding in a barn, his grand coronation transformed into a humiliating farce. Amid the pandemonium, Carlo Gambino remains preternaturally calm. He does not run. He simply walks to his car, gets in, and waits. When the troopers approach, he presents his driver's license. He is Carlo Gambino, a commission salesman from Brooklyn in the area on business. He claims to have gotten lost and stopped at the Barber house to ask for directions when his car developed engine trouble. His story is flimsy, but his demeanor is impeccable. He is polite, cooperative, and utterly unremarkable. He is questioned, and like dozens of others, eventually released for lack of immediate evidence. The Appalachian meeting is a disaster for the mafia. It confirms on the front page of every newspaper in the country the existence of a nationwide organized crime syndicate, something the FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover had long publicly denied. It brings unprecedented heat from federal law enforcement, leading to the creation of new task forces and the passage of harsher anti-racketeering laws. For Vito Genovese, it is the beginning of the end. His power is shattered, his reputation irrevocably damaged. The other bosses, humiliated and now under intense government scrutiny, blame him for the debacle. No one, however, blames Carlo Gambino. In the aftermath, whispers begin to circulate. How did a small-town cop know to raid the most important mob meeting in a generation? The answer is a quiet betrayal, a masterstroke of Machiavellian genius. Before the summit, Gambino, through a trusted intermediary, had arranged for an anonymous tip to be delivered to Sergeant Croswell's office. He knew Genovese's ego would lead him to this grand, foolish gesture. He simply gave law enforcement the time and place. He used the full power of the United States government as his own personal enforcement arm, eliminating his most dangerous rival without firing a shot or even raising his voice. He had helped create a king, and then just as quietly, he had led him to the guillotine. Vito Genovese would soon be convicted on a narcotics charge, a setup widely believed to have been orchestrated by Gambino and his allies, and would die in prison. The throne he so desperately coveted was now effectively empty, and Carlo Gambino, the silent man from Palermo, was poised to take it all. The 1960s, a decade of cultural revolution, of social upheaval and political assassination. While America is consumed by Vietnam, civil rights, and rock and roll, Carlo Gambino is ushering in a golden era for his family. He has consolidated his power, emerging from the ashes of Appalachian, not as a flamboyant gangster, but as the chairman of a vast, sprawling corporation. The Gambino crime family, under his leadership, becomes the largest, wealthiest, and most powerful criminal organization in the nation. He is the chairman of the commission, the undisputed final word in the American underworld, yet his name is almost never mentioned in the newspapers. He is a phantom, an emperor who rules from the shadows. His headquarters is not a gaudy nightclub or a fortified mansion, but a modest red brick house at 221 Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn. From a simple kitchen table, he presides over an empire that stretches from the docks of Red Hook to the construction sites of Midtown Manhattan, from the Garment District to the newly opened John F. Kennedy International Airport. He has his hands in everything. His control over the trucking industry is absolute, giving him a piece of nearly every product that enters or leaves New York City. He dominates the private sanitation industry, the concrete unions, and the wholesale meat distribution market through his brother-in-law and underboss, Paul Castellano. His captains, like Agnello Mr. Neil Della Croce, run the traditional rackets, gambling, loan sharking, and extortion, with ruthless efficiency from Della Croce's headquarters at the Ravenite Social Club in Little Italy. Gambino's philosophy is simple. Earn, do not agitate. He forbids his men from dealing in narcotics, a rule born not of morality, but of cold, hard pragmatism. He knows that drug trafficking brings long prison sentences and attracts the most aggressive federal investigators. It is a messy, high-risk business, and he wants no part of it. He prefers the steady, low-profile income from his legitimate and semi-legitimate enterprises. He is a businessman first, a gangster second. He fosters alliances with other families, mediating disputes with the wisdom of a seasoned diplomat. Bloodshed is bad for business. He sanctions a murder only when it is absolutely necessary, and always with the quiet approval of the commission he now controls. His power is subtle, almost invisible. When a construction project begins in Manhattan, the developer knows that to avoid labor trouble, to ensure the concrete is poured on time, he must use a Gambino-controlled company. No threats are made. No one mentions the mafia. It is simply understood. When a garment factory needs to ship its new line of dresses, it uses a Gambino-owned trucking firm. The price is a little higher, but the trucks are never hijacked. It is the cost of doing business in Carlo City. He lives a life of calculated modesty. He drives an old Buick. He tends his garden. He is a grandfather who dotes on his family. This carefully crafted image of a humble retiree makes him a frustratingly elusive target for law enforcement. The FBI has a dedicated squad, C-16, assigned to him. They follow him everywhere. They bug his car, his home, his favorite restaurants, but they get nothing. On tape, he speaks in cryptic allegories and gestures, never mentioning anything incriminating. When he needs to have a truly sensitive conversation, he takes his associates for a walk, his low voice swallowed by the city noise, a technique the agents dub a walk talk. He outwits them at every turn. When he knows he is being followed, he will lead agents on a meandering hours-long drive through Brooklyn, only to end up back at his own home. He makes a game of it, a quiet war of attrition against the federal government. But even in this golden age, threats emerge. A flamboyant captain from another family, Joseph Crazy Joe Gallo, starts a rebellion, challenging the old ways and attracting massive media attention. Gallo is a new breed, charismatic, media-savvy, and utterly disrespectful of the established hierarchy. His war with the Profaci family, and later, the Colombo family, threatens the peace that Gambino has worked so hard to maintain. On April 7, 1972, while celebrating his birthday at Umberto's Clam House in Little Italy, Gallo is gunned down in a hail of bullets. The hit is a public spectacle, but the order is whispered to have come from the very top. It is a message from the silent emperor. The old rules still apply. The peace will be kept at any cost. May 19th, 1972. The hum of the fluorescent lights is the only sound in the cavernous garage in Queens. Emmanuel "Manny" Gambino, Carlo's favorite nephew, waits for a business associate. He is a man accustomed to the power his surname affords him, but the two men who approach him from the shadows are not there to discuss business. They are kidnappers, opportunists who believe they can extort a fortune from the most powerful don in America. They demand $200,000. The news of the abduction hits the underworld like an earthquake. It is a staggering act of disrespect, a direct assault on the king himself. For the first time in decades, the aura of untouchability around Carlo Gambino has been breached. The old don does not rage. He does not scream. A cold, quiet fury settles over him. He convenes a meeting not of his top capos, but of his deadliest street soldiers. He wants his nephew back, and he wants the men responsible found. He makes the ransom payment, but Manny is never returned. Weeks later, his body is discovered in a shallow grave in New Jersey. The line has been crossed. The response from the silent emperor is swift and surgical. The investigation is led by Agnello Della Croce, who assigns the task of hunting down the main suspect, a gangster named James McBratney, to a rising, ambitious soldier from his crew named John Gotti. On May 22nd, 1973, Gotti and two other men walk into Snoop's Bar and Grill on Staten Island. They locate McBratney, and in front of a bar full of witnesses, they shoot him dead. The message is clear and unequivocal. There is no corner of the city, no sanctuary, for those who harm the Gambino family. The revenge is complete, but the incident has taken a toll on the old man. At 71, Carlo's heart is failing. The FBI agents who tail him notice he moves slower, his famous walk talks becoming shorter and less frequent. He spends more and more time at his new home, a waterfront estate in the affluent Long Island suburb of Massapequa, leaving the day-to-day operations to his two most powerful subordinates. Those two men represent the warring souls of the Gambino family. On one side is Agnello Della Croce, the underboss. A tough, old-school racketeer from Little Italy, Della Croce is respected, even loved, by the street crews. He is a man's man, a soldier's boss, the natural and expected successor. On the other side is Paul Castellano, Carlo's brother-in-law. Big Paul is a businessman who runs the family's vast white-collar enterprises from his own opulent Staten Island mansion, which he calls the White House. He disdains the street rackets, seeing them as beneath him. He is the future. Della Croce is the past. Gambino, the master strategist, faces his final and most critical decision: succession. By mafia tradition, the underboss takes the throne. Della Croce is the only choice. To pass him over would be an insult of the highest order, an act that could split the family in two. But Gambino sees the world changing. The future, he believes, is in legitimate business, not back-alley bookmaking. He trusts Castellano's financial acumen, and more importantly, he trusts his blood. In a move that shocks the entire organization, he anoints Paul Castellano as his chosen heir. To placate the powerful and deeply insulted Della Croce faction, he decrees that Della Croce will remain underboss, and his crews will continue to operate their rackets independently, reporting only to him. It is a compromise designed to keep the peace, but it is a fragile one. He has drawn a line down the middle of his empire,